In Charles Dickens's David Copperfield, Clara Copperfield, the protagonist's mother, appears mainly in the early chapters of the novel, but her role has lasting importance. Although she dies when David is still a child, Clara leaves a deep impression on his character and on the novel as a whole. She is portrayed as a kind, gentle, and loving woman, but also as weak and easily influenced by others. Through Clara, Dickens explores themes of motherhood, vulnerability, authority, and the social position of women in Victorian society. Role in the narrative. Clara Copperfield's role in the narrative is primarily as David's first source of love and protection. She is a young widow at the beginning of the novel, raising David alone after the death of her husband. Her tender and affectionate nature provides David with a sense of safety during his earliest years. He remembers her with deep love, often associating her with warmth and comfort. However, Clara is also portrayed as fragile and vulnerable, unable to stand up against strong-willed or harsh personalities. This becomes painfully clear when she remarries Edward Murdstone. Her weakness allows Mr. Murdstone to dominate her and eventually mistreat David. Instead of defending her son, Clara submits to her new husband's authority, which results in David's early suffering. Clara's decline in health and eventual death mark a turning point in David's life. With her gone, David loses his main protector, leaving him exposed to cruelty and neglect. Although her presence in the novel is relatively brief, the consequences of her actions, her remarriage, her inability to resist her husband, and her early death shape much of the rest of the story. Symbolic significance. Clara embodies the gentleness and affection of a mother. To David, she is his first experience of unconditional love. Even though she is weak in the face of her husband's authority, her bond with David is genuine and nurturing. She represents the importance of maternal affection in shaping a child's early sense of identity and security. Clara also symbolizes fragility, particularly the vulnerability of women in a patriarchal society. Dickens describes her as almost childlike in her innocence, someone who requires protection rather than someone who can provide it. Her dependence on others and her inability to resist Mr. Murdstone's control highlight the limitations placed on women of her time, who often had little authority in their own households. Clara serves as a symbolic contrast to characters such as Betsy Trotwood, David's aunt. Whereas Clara is submissive and delicate, Betsy is strong-willed, outspoken, and independent. This contrast highlights two distinct models of womanhood in Dickens's novel, one that is passive and vulnerable, and one that resists male authority and assumes a protective role. Clara's early death and her inability to shield David from harm also symbolize the loss of innocence. With her gone, David is forced to confront the harsher realities of life. Clara's fragility and absence thus represent the transition from the safety of childhood to the difficulties of the adult world. Broader implications. Clara reflects the limited power women had during Dickens's time. As a young widow, she is vulnerable, socially and financially. Her remarriage to Mr. Murdstone is partly a reflection of her need for stability, but it also reveals how women were pressured to depend on men for protection and security. Once married, she loses authority over her own household, and even over her son. Dickens uses Clara to criticize a system that left women with few options and little independence. Clara's inability to protect David shows how parental weakness can affect a child's development. Although she loves David deeply, her submission to Mr. Murdstone allows David to suffer cruel treatment. Dickens suggests that love alone is not enough. Parents also need strength and courage to defend their children. This idea becomes important later in the novel, as David reflects on the importance of moral guidance and strong role models. Clara's character also highlights the tension between authority and gentleness. Dickens seems to suggest that while love and kindness are essential, they must be combined with firmness to withstand oppression. Clara's gentleness, without the balance of strength, makes her ineffective in protecting herself and her son. In contrast, characters like Betsy Trotwood show how authority and kindness can coexist. Although Clara dies early, her influence continues throughout David's life. His memories of her tenderness stay with him, shaping his longing for kindness and warmth in others. For example, his attraction to gentle characters like Agnes Wickfield may be partly connected to the nurturing love he once experienced with his mother. This reflects how early parental influence can echo throughout a person's life. Clara Copperfield is sometimes criticized by readers as being too weak, but Dickens gives her a complexity that makes her more than just a one-dimensional figure. On one hand, she is loving, affectionate, and devoted to her son. On the other hand, her dependence and submissiveness make her vulnerable to control. This mixture of love and weakness makes her both sympathetic and tragic. Her characterization also raises questions about responsibility. Should Clara be blamed for failing to protect David? Or should she be pitted for being a victim of her circumstances? Dickens leaves this somewhat open, encouraging readers to see her as both flawed and tragic. Conclusion: Clara Copperfield may not be a central figure throughout the entire novel, but her role is crucial in shaping both David's life and the themes of David Copperfield. As David's mother, she represents love, gentleness, and maternal affection, but also fragility and helplessness. Symbolically, she stands for the vulnerability of women and the dangers of weakness in the face of authority. On a broader level, her character sheds light on issues of gender inequality, parental responsibility, and the importance of striking a balance between kindness and strength. Clara's story is ultimately a tragic one, but her presence remains powerful. Through her, Dickens reminds us that even short lives and fragile characters can leave deep, lasting marks. Her role in the narrative, her symbolic significance, and the broader implications of her character make Clara Copperfield a vital, if understated, figure in the novel.